Oh, stop it.
Sister.
You're going to take this out of the... Oh.
Sister, I'm supposed to edit this part out.
What is it? Progress, not perfection.
Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna Reed and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Donna Reed with Keller Williams Southern Arizona, and I am here with my brother,
Eric Seemann, and I am with Keller Williams in San Antonio, Texas.
And we are here with our podcast, Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy. We are spending a little bit of time each time we get together with you, and we're talking a little bit about where we live and work and the real estate that we do where we live. And then we compare and contrast to where we grew up in Northwest Ohio. So again, I'm in Arizona and Eric's in Texas. And this week, we're going to talk about roofs. Is that exciting? Are you excited to learn about the roofs?
Look, it protects you from the weather and it supports the walls.
Good.
So it's a stabilizer and it's a protector. Roofs are a good thing.
Roofs are important to have. So if you're watching this, we did something a little bit different today. And we actually put a picture of a home behind us that is sort of normal for where we live. So Eric, where do you think we should start with this today?
Well, I think if we're talking roofs, we got to go right back to you, because what is pictured behind me is what I'm used to seeing, which is slope. And what you have behind you, flat roof, that is not what we saw growing up. It is not what's here in San Antonio, probably the most uncommon. So how do you have so many flat roofs, and what kind of roof material in Arizona?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. After you and I chatted a little this morning, I thought a little more about it. And I thought, okay, this particular home and the flat roofs, so here we call them Santa Fe style, because they were in fact kind of like the Pueblo homes in New Mexico, where they would just build one level on top of another and have steps on the outside and go up, up, up. But what did you tell me you called them in San Antonio?
An adobe.
Okay.
We call them an adobe. I think that more common, and as I say, not really prominent. Several years ago, I had a client call and ask, when you try to go that specific on an exterior, it's so uncommon you can't even search for it.
So when I first moved here, and I came to college here, but then came back and moved here in 2020, this was probably is that right? 2020? Oh my gosh, no, 2000.
2020 was only 2 years ago. 2000 is when you came through San Antonio with those two youngest children of yours.
Oh my Lord, 22 years ago. So the style of the homes and the flat roofs was definitely something that was one of the biggest differences. What we have is, first of all, they're not perfectly flat. If they were perfectly flat, the water would never drain off the roof. And contrary to popular belief, we do get rain now and then. As a matter of fact, just a few minutes ago. So we delayed our filming of this and broadcasting because of the rain. What you see from the street level is typically built up about a foot to 8 inches taller than actually where the roof is. The water drains out through
Hold on. Say that again.
Okay, so what you would see from the street, the actual roof is a few inches below that, and I see a few like a foot below what you see from the street. And that is where then the water would drain out of these scuppers. And the scuppers are often, let's see, mine at my house are about 8 to 10 inches wide and 6 to 10 inches tall. And then they stick out from the house, and that's where the water drains out. The roof itself, back in the ones that were built here in the 50s and stuff, some of those flat roofs had just tar and rocks thrown on top of them. And every once in a while, I still see some of those. But the current style and what's used, it's a product called Elastomeric. And frankly, that could be a name brand like Kleenex as a tissue. I'm not sure. It's a rubberized coating, and they require a little more maintenance than gabled roofs. You have to know when you buy one of these that every 3 to 5 years, you're probably going to be recoating and making sure that gunk hasn't gotten stuck up there, and that all those scuppers or drains are not plugged plugged up.
Okay, when we first talked about this, I was thinking the scupper, because years ago, I used to do industrial roofing with some of the family friends, all the way back to when the moms met in the hospital. But we were doing industrial roofs, would slope towards the center and had a pipe that would drain down through the center, and there'd be that cage over top of it. But these scuppers are actually more along the lines of like a gargoyle.
Well, they are. They're a wood beam or they're a metal thing. So depending on how decorative the home is, they can be made to look like wood. And again, the one that's behind me, what you see that looks like wood isn't even wood. It's fabricated to look like wood because wood deteriorates so quickly in the hot sun. What we don't have and what you won't see on a lot of homes here, except some of the newer ones, are gutters. We didn't used to need gutters. And then some of us made the mistake of having our scuppers drain into our gutters. That's a whole lot of stuff. And they got plugged up. So the flat roof is something that is kind of unique I'm guessing to the Southwest, but I've seen some of these in Florida and California, but just certainly not the Midwest where we grew up, right?
Yeah, certainly not. And again, just not common here in San Antonio. We're more temperate, but I mean, we have a lot of diversity in our roofs. As I was thinking about it and preparing for this, the predominant here is still probably composition shingles or asphalt shingles, as they're maybe known at, depending on what region of the country you're in. You find as you get into this that you have to have a certain slope on your roof in order to use different materials. There are individuals who want to do a renovation on a home and they want to change the material. And if they do that, they have to make sure the material is good for the slope on their roof. Yeah. And I was driving just the other day. There's an area in San Antonio. It's actually a road called Hot Wells Boulevard, and Hot Wells was, like so many towns, it was natural spring bath pools. And man, in the 30s and 40s, it was the place to go. Just about every Hollywood celebrity performer vaudevillian that was on the road came through San Antonio and played at Hot Wells, stayed at the Hot Wells. Driving down that street, I saw three very, very distinct houses side by side. One that had a very, very steep slope, might even have been like a 1412. And what that means is that if you had the run over the rise is the way the slope of a roof is expressed. 12 inches is normally the measurement, and it's a question of how much is the rise in that 12-inch run of the horizontal. 14 is a very, very steep roof. Typical is probably a 612, maybe an 812 in the roof.
Yeah.
But it had this one that, as I say, I figure was a 1412 next to something that's probably a pretty standard 612 next to something else that was down closer to maybe a 212.
Oh, that's
all
fascinating.
Side by side.
And you know what? Before I forget, I need to make it known that, of course, underneath this buildup, there's plywood. It isn't just like some sticky stuff slapped on a roof. It's plywood with a tar with the elastomeric. And when someone's walking on the roof, which I have mine checked twice a year, because as you and I discussed, also out here, many times the air conditioners or the swamp coolers, which were evaporative systems, were on the roofs. So if a roofer's walking around out here on a purported flat roof and it's spongy, chances are the plywood got wet, which meant they probably didn't seal it and coat it and do the maintenance that was needed on a regular basis.
Are any of the newer houses using metal decking?
You know what? A little, but not tons and tons. I think I have seen and or shown, I don't think I sold it. Maybe one. I might have sold one with a metal, but not much. And our others, just like everybody else, there are the composition shingles and then, of course, tiles. And you know that my house is half and half. I've got part flat and I have a vaulted roof with tile, which now I have to have redone because the underlayment is from 1979.
Okay. So again, you said tile. What kind of tile? There's different. I mean, we use flat tiles. We use barrel tiles. So what kind of tile are you talking about?
All of the above. The one that was used at my house isn't made anymore. So I'm looking for one that's a similar color because our subdivision wants it to be. So it needs to be that rusty ruddy color to go with our assorted tan homes, right? And it actually has a little curve to it, a little bit of a bubble, and then one kind of fits inside the other.
And
But
are
when
those
the-
actually clay now, or are they
Yes,
cement?
clay. No,
you still
they're
use clay tiles, because a lot
Yeah.
of them, that when they do that in San Antonio, you're using cement. They're not using clay.
And it was, and you can get them in different colors now. And some of the newer homes have the flat ones, and they could be cement. And that might be something that I should check on in these new builds that are going
Yeah.
up and seeing what they're using. So, and in the past, and I don't know that this is true, because as the quality of everything improves, we were told that, okay, shingles had like a 20-year warranty, and then tile had a 30-year warranty. So in me retiling my roof this year, I expect I do not have to do it again before I die. That's my thought.
Does that mean you're not planning on moving? You're not going to be a statistic?
I don't know. I think I'll keep my place and maybe rent it out if I go anywhere else. The other thing, Aaron, that we were talking about when you were talking about the slope, is that I mentioned having been in Quebec and how they have super steep. So I don't know what the rise over the run would be there, but they have, and in the places where it snows a lot, they have like metal spikes that come up on the edge to help keep the snow from coming off in this massive piece, and to break it up and to break up the ice. That was something that was interesting for me to see when I was north. And I would guess that our home in Lindsey, steeper than most anything that we've got down here. What do you think?
I think typical. We've described that house in Lindsey, the 2-story living area, and then a 3rd-story attic space. And it had the mansard roof.
Yeah.
The mansard roof had a much steeper slope. Some of the mansards, I think, even could be close to 18 to 20 inches. 2012, it would be that steep, but it would be very short, because then it was capped off with a flat roof, which, of course, we just discussed, wasn't really flat. There was a center point, and it just slowly went to the edge, but it was enough of a slope that the water would gradually run off and not pool on top of the roof.
Yeah.
And Dad used to, I think at some point it was rolled asphalt, and then he put the tar on top of it. He'd get like the silver paint,
wasn't it,
and the bucket, and used to brush it.
When we
Huh?
first was that first roof, when Dad and Mom bought that house from the 1860s, wasn't that masonite shingles? Weren't they like a?
No, it was slate.
Oh, slate. That's right. You're right.
The
you're
slate,
correct.
and as I remember it, it was actually 3 tones, because typical with the mansard and the slate, you built in patterns because people could see it.
Yeah.
It was much more prominent because this steep slope that it had. It had a lighter gray was probably the dominant. The darker gray was the diamond pattern. And then in between each one of the diamonds was a red tile.
Okay. All right. So in San Antonio, so because you and I are doing video as we record this, I'm looking at the one behind you, and I told you it looked like kind of what I just saw in France, because it's like an older limestone, and then you got the blue bonnets growing. But that one almost looks like a metal roof to me because of the way it looks so much what I just saw.
And it is a metal roof. That house would not have been a metal roof when it was built. Okay. Very, very typical at the time of that house being built in the 1800s. It had wood shingles, and they were probably, or most likely, what we refer to as cypress shingles or bald cypress. Along a lot of the South Texas rivers, there are these huge trees. The San Antonio River Walk and the San Antonio River is just covered with these giant bald cypress trees. And where I live in Bandera County, that was one of the main things that they did in the 1800s is they cut shingles and would take them into San Antonio to sell them.
Oh,
so they were hand making shingles and shakes. And it's hard to believe, again, the drive that I did today. I had to go out to the appraisal office today and then into San Antonio. And that drive used to be a 3-week round trip. So the people would load their the people would load their carts, horse-drawn, obviously. It took a week plus to get into downtown. They would sell their load. They'd buy what they needed for supplies and special stuff that they couldn't get out in the country or grow, and then take that same 7 to 8 days to get back out to Bandera.
Wow.
So it was, and I did it in 45 minutes. What used to take 7 to 8 days.
Wow.
And of course, I didn't have to worry about Comanches. I didn't have to worry about bear and buffalo, mountain lions. There's things about being here in the hill country that were part of life. And we've got some mountain lions that have been recently seen again out here. But the roof behind me then upgraded and had the metal put on. And it was that actually, I don't even think is what would be typically referred to as a standing seam metal roof. That is a very unique product where they took the roof material and they put it down, and then they actually had to crimp the edge over the adjacent piece in order to create the weatherproofing. And a standing seam metal roof, you can see ones that are faux standing seam and those that are real standing seam, because you can
what is
see
yours?
Where the metal actually was curved and crimped over top of the adjacent metal material.
All right. So you put a metal roof on your house a few years back, right?
Yes.
And what is yours?
I believe the product technically is a Galvalume. It's colored. You know, it's copper colored. But it's aluminum galvanized composite. It's a blend, so it doesn't rust.
Okay.
And because our equipment has improved so much, again, you think the standing seam metal roof used to be pieces of material that may be 4 to 5 feet. And they had to be overlapped and folded and bound together. And now you can get, because of sheeting equipment, you can do 14, 22, 24 foot runs nonstop.
Right. Great. Very
and then, of course, like I said, there's composite. We do have some that are Spanish tile. You know, we were putting this together and we talked about the fact that there are traditional, those 30-year asphalt or composition shingles, but then we have some that we call heavy duty. And heavy duty are a thicker material, and the thicker material actually allows you to create that kind of dimensional effect. So it adds a little bit of depth to the shingle. Right. Most of the time, if you're in a neighborhood, the amount of new building that's going on here, it's builder basic stuff. And
unless it's a
composition
custom home.
And just like you said, the colors are dictated. The type of tile that you're going to put on your townhome is directed by a neighborhood. And if you're buying a house and it's still under construction, you may have some selections that you can take, but most of them are, look, there's 3 different shades, and if your neighbors have this one, you can't.
Elevation.
So don't get your heart set on this with
elevation A, B, or C.
Right.
So one of the other things that you and I talked about when we were just planning and talking about the roofs was we talked about air. So in the flat roof homes like this, we may or may not have a crawl space. When I have home inspections, there's times where you can open something.
I was thinking that.
But
when you were talking.
But if there's not a peak, often there's no place to go. And I always say our home inspectors have to be crazy skinny so they can fit in these places that I don't even know. But partly back, 50 to 100 years ago, it was because we didn't have cooling and because heat rises and they weren't going to have tall. And so I don't know what the level of insulation was at that point. But again, looking at the vaulted ones and thinking about, so our house on Main Street, when we were little kids, my dresser was built into the attic behind my, in my room. Like you walked through the attic door in that room, Eric. And
I don't remember that. I mean, I remember the room off of Ken and I because we had it as a playroom, but you had mom and dad use yours more for storage?
Yeah. And so it definitely was there. We all had attics. Dan had that little attic space off of, where he slept. You guys had that big space where you were. And then mine had a little door that you went in and it had all the nooks and crannies like an attic might, with that home, which was built in the late 50s. But I remember, my dresser didn't stick out into the room. It was flush with the wall and then the drawers were behind it. And so it's just interesting here. Every time I do a home inspection and we look to see if there's a crawl space, we walk around.
And see if there's an access panel or something.
And honestly, the ones that have the furnaces in the attic, to me, so much work to replace that, they're quieter than when they were in the hallways, back in the older homes where they were in a closet in the hallway with a hot water heater.
The 1950s where they had the little vent and the narrow closet.
Exactly. Tons of those. But when I think about replacing them, to me, it's just always fascinating who does what job and how they get up there to do it. And as you and I talked about briefly, having the air conditioners on the roof, or as we call them, the swamp coolers, which were a moisture providing cooler where you changed a water pad and you kept water in them. Those also then created the possibility of damage around on the roof, right? If there was leaks or if there was issues. So kind of a mixed bag with the style of roofs and
style of roof and temperature and climate. And out here where we're at, we figure the weather always wins. It's just a matter of time. I mean, honestly, since we put the metal on, the metal has been fabulous. And it's been on now for 16 years on our house. Wow. And we haven't had an issue with it. Aside from the fact that the winds blow hard enough, they lift the edge right on the edge of the roof during the winter blue northers, as they refer to them here in Texas.
Oh, wow.
And there's a strip of insulation insulation or two that goes right there at the edge of the roof line on up in, and it lifts up and those actually blow out. So occasionally I have to get the ladder and I have to get up and I stick those back in, and they're 2 or 3 thick. So it's not like you're creating the space, because we have that gap and it's prone to rodents.
Right.
And stuff getting stuck up in there. And of course, I mean, we're talking this through and I'm looking at it, and you said something about not having much of a crawl space. But I'm thinking once you added air conditioning and you started doing central air, that space where you've got the roof line, then you actually got, or the visual roof line from the street. And you say the roof may be 12 inches below that. Yep. And then there's got to be 12 to 18 inches in there, because that's where you're running your duct work for your air conditioning and some electrical, and then down from there. And so that's where your insulation goes. And
I just heard your puppy, one of your puppies.
Yes, one of the dogs in the dog alarm just went off, because
it must be time for something.
we are at the high-end studio. That's what we're doing here. So we're talking, and man, again, there's just so much more that we could go into and touch on. It's going to have to be another conversation in another episode, because we've talked about venting and soffits, and on a flat roof, you don't have soffits the same way we can on a roof that has a peak or a pitch to it, and that has that slope. The difference in materials, the deck material, we talked about radiant barriers, and are they doing that out there? And they're certainly doing it here, and those type of discussions. But I think we've already had our time for the day, and we probably need to be bringing this one to a close.
I do, but before you close, I want to remind everybody that if you have questions, that's what we're here for. So if you've never lived in San Antonio, or if you've never lived in Tucson and you're going to be moving, we both live near military bases. Eric lives near 3 or 4 of them. And, we know that people move all the time to places they're not familiar with. And that's why we're trying to expose you all to some of these things and answer your questions. Maybe
wow, that just sounded like a joke.
Why?
That's why we're exposing ourselves.
Oh, stop it.
Sister.
You're gonna take this out of the...
Sister, I'm supposed to edit this part out.
What is it? Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, there you go. Progress, not perfection.
Alrighty, so wrap it up for us, Eric.
All right. As Donna said and reminded you, thank you for joining us. Number one, taking your time and listening to us and joining us on this conversation, talking roofs today. And yes, it stabilizes and protects. And remember, as she indicated, we are both professional real estate advisors. We work in large metropolitan areas. We know and have knowledge about the industry. And beyond that, if you're looking somewhere else in the country or even around the world, we have access and resources to a global network of real estate professionals, and we can help connect you with someone we know and services their clients the same way we do. Until next time, I'm Eric.
And I'm Donna.
And we are Real Siblings.
Thanks,
Bye, y'all.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Annabelle, and I want to thank you for investing your valuable time in listening to Real Sibling. It Ain't Easy. I hope you found this episode informative and enjoyable. There are several ways you can support this podcast with my Grandpa Eric and Aunt Grandma. Please take the time to like, follow, and subscribe. Additionally, leave them a 5-star rating along with a review on your preferred podcast platform. The final thing I would ask is that you recommend this podcast to a friend, a family member, or an associate. Your engagement is critical to their ongoing success, and they look forward to connecting. Check out the show notes Grandpa put together with their contact information, including emails, phone numbers, and website. And remember, the Real Siblings look forward to hearing from you.